After my husband's funeral, my parents and sister sat in my living room, practically salivating. They didn't ask how I was coping. They only wanted to know about the money. When I quietly revealed that Richard had left me his 3 multi-million-dollar apartment buildings, my sister's jaw dropped in envy, and my mother immediately started dividing the real estate up among them. They thought I was a grieving, weak widow they could easily manipulate. But what they didn't know, and what their greedy hands were far too impatient to discover, was the hidden clause attached to those 3 apartments. A clause my late husband specifically designed to expose every single lie my family had been telling me for the last 10 years. They came to steal my inheritance, but by the end of the night, they were begging me not to call the police. My name is Audrey, and at 32 years old, I found myself standing in a sea of black umbrellas, watching the love of my life being lowered into the ground. Richard was only 42 when an aggressive illness stole him from me. He was my rock, my partner, and the only person who had ever truly protected me from the ruthless greed of my own family. My parents, Eleanor and Arthur, along with my 27-year-old sister, Chloe, had spent my entire life treating me like a second-class citizen. Chloe was always the golden child who could do no wrong, while I was expected to sit quietly, yield to their demands, and play the obedient daughter. When I drove home from the cemetery, exhausted and numb with grief, I walked through my front door expecting solitude. Instead, I found Eleanor, Arthur, and Chloe sitting in my living room, drinking my coffee as if they were waiting for a show to start. They hadn't come to comfort a grieving widow, they had come for a payout. Before I could even take off my coat, Eleanor cleared her throat. "Audrey, we know this is hard, but we need to discuss Richard's estate. A young woman like you can't possibly manage his complicated finances alone." I looked at their eager, expectant faces and took a slow breath. Actually, the lawyer just gave me the summary. Richard left me everything, including his 3 multi-million-dollar apartment buildings downtown. For a second, the living room fell dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop. But then Chloe gasped, her face flushing red with pure, ugly envy. 3 buildings? She practically shrieked, slamming her coffee mug onto the glass table. That's not fair. Why does she get 3 whole apartment complexes when Mark and I are struggling to buy a basic starter home? Dad, say something. My father, Arthur, cleared his throat, shifting uncomfortably in Richard's favorite armchair before adjusting his tie. Now, Audrey, Chloe has a point. 3 commercial properties is a massive burden for a 32-year-old widow to carry all by herself. You don't know the first thing about real estate management or handling tenants. Your father is right. My mother, Eleanor, chimed in smoothly, stepping toward me with a practiced, sympathetic smile that didn't reach her cold eyes. Family shares wealth, Audrey. That's how we survive. It's only right that you sign 2 of those buildings over. One goes to Chloe as a wedding gift so she and Mark can start their lives properly. The second one comes to your father and me for our retirement fund. You keep the third one. 1 building is more than enough for a single woman with no children. I stared at them, feeling a cold knot form in my stomach. Richard wasn't even buried for 2 hours, and they were already carving up his life's work like vultures over a carcass. You want me to just give away 2 multi-million-dollar properties? I asked, keeping my voice quiet, delicate, and intentionally weak. It's not giving it away. It's doing the right thing. Eleanor snapped softly, crossing her arms. We're saving you from ruin, Audrey. Just sign the papers over and let us take care of you. I looked at my mother's confident smile, then at Chloe, who was already smirking as if those building keys were already in her purse. They truly believed I was the same pushy family's doormat I'd been for 32 years. Well, I said, letting my hand tremble slightly as I reached into my coat pocket. Before we discuss transferring titles, there's a small matter we have to settle first. Richard's estate attorney gave me a sealed legal folder at the funeral. He said I couldn't transfer or claim ownership of a single unit until I opened it in front of the family. Chloe rolled her eyes. Oh, please, Audrey. It's probably just standard probate paperwork. Just hand it over, and we'll have our lawyer draft the transfer deeds tomorrow. No, I replied firmly, unsealing the heavy yellow envelope. Richard was very specific. Before any property can be touched, I am required to review the tenant registries and audited financial logs for each building. Richard spent his final 3 weeks in the hospital personally auditing every single account. My father's relaxed posture suddenly stiffened. Auditing? Why would he be doing accounting work on his deathbed? Because, I said, pulling out 3 thick blue folders labeled Building A, Building B, and Building C, Richard suspected someone was stealing from him. And he proved it. I opened the first folder, labeled Building A, a luxury 30-unit complex in the heart of downtown. My eyes scanned the fresh legal affidavit attached to the front page. According to these bank records, I read aloud, my voice echoing in the silent room. For the past 2 years, 20% of Building A's monthly rent checks have been routed directly into a private shell company called Apex Management, a company Richard never authorized. The moment the words Apex Management left my mouth, the color completely drained from Chloe's face. Her eyes darted frantically toward the floor, her hands trembling so violently that she dropped her phone onto the rug. Apex Management, I repeated, turning the page to reveal the corporate registration documents attached beneath the bank statements. That's odd. Apex Management isn't a property firm at all. It's a single-member LLC registered right here in the city, under the name of Mark Stevens. Chloe, isn't that your fiancé? Chloe choked on her breath, opening her mouth to speak, but no sound came out. My mother jumped to her feet, her hands flying to her hips. Now wait just a minute, Audrey. Mark is a young businessman trying to get on his feet. There must be some kind of clerical error. There's no error, Mom. I cut in, my voice cold and razor-sharp. Mark has been illegally skimming over $8,000 a month in tenant rent. Over 2 years, he stole nearly $200,000 from my husband. Before Eleanor could manufacture another excuse, I closed the first folder with a sharp snap and picked up the second one, labeled Building B. My father sank deeper into Richard's armchair, sweating profusely despite the cool room. Let's look at Building B, I continued, flipping open the audit notes. A 40-unit residential tower. Richard noticed a massive inflation in maintenance fees over the last 3 years. Unusually high invoices paid to an independent contractor who was taking illegal kickbacks and falsifying repair receipts. I looked up from the page and met my father's terrified gaze. Richard hired you as the off-site manager 3 years ago to help you get out of debt, Dad. I whispered. And you repaid him by stealing from his legacy. My father couldn't even look me in the eye. He stared blankly at his polished shoes, his throat moving as he swallowed hard, completely speechless. Audrey, please, my mother pleaded, her arrogant demeanor collapsing into frantic desperation. She rushed over, grabbing my arm with clammy hands. We're your family. Your father was just trying to secure our future. And Mark was just reckless. Don't ruin our lives over numbers on paper. We can fix this quietly. Just sign the properties over, and we'll handle the debts internally. I slowly pulled my arm out of her grip and smiled, a cold, deliberate smile that made Eleanor freeze in her tracks. We haven't looked at Building C yet, Mom, I said smoothly. I picked up the final, heaviest folder. Building C was Richard's crown jewel, a high-rise commercial complex worth millions. Attached to the front was a notarized affidavit signed by Richard just 4 days before he passed away, along with a certified letter from the district attorney's office. 4 months ago, Richard discovered a massive wire fraud scheme. I read, keeping my voice steady. Someone transferred $300,000 out of Building C's emergency reserve fund into an offshore account. An account registered under your name, Mom. Co-signed by Chloe. Eleanor let out a sharp gasp, her face turning ashen. And here's the best part, I said, looking around at the 3 panicking faces standing in my living room. Richard left a very specific, poison pill clause in his final will. If I voluntarily sign over, transfer, or gift any of these 3 properties to any member of my family, all 3 buildings immediately default to a public charitable trust. And this entire binder of evidence is automatically submitted directly to state prosecutors. The room exploded into utter chaos. Chloe began sobbing hysterically, burying her face in her hands, while my mother sank to her knees right in front of me, grabbing the hem of my dress. Audrey, no. You can't do this to us. Eleanor wept, her voice trembling with raw horror. They'll put your sister in prison, your father, and I will lose everything. Please, Audrey, we're your blood. You have to protect us. I stood tall, looking down at the woman who had spent 32 years making me feel worthless. The meek, soft-spoken widow they thought they could easily manipulate was gone. Blood didn't stop you from stealing from my dying husband, I said, my voice cutting through the room like a cold steel blade. You came into my home today expecting to strip me bare while Richard's body was barely cold. You didn't care about my grief. You only cared about what you could take. My father finally stood up, shaking violently, his voice barely a whisper. What do you want from us, Audrey? I opened my purse and pulled out 3 thick legal documents that Richard's trust attorney had prepared for me earlier that morning. Here is your ultimatum, I announced, setting the papers on the table. Option 1. You sign these admission of liability agreements right now. You agree to surrender all rights to Richard's estate forever, and you sign over your personal assets, including your house, Dad, to fully repay every single cent you, Mark, and Chloe stole from my properties over a structured payment plan. I leaned in close to my mother. Option 2. I close this folder, call the police right now, and let state prosecutors handle the 3 of you. You have 2 minutes to choose. There was no debate, no further arguments, and no more arrogant demands. With tears streaming down their faces and hands shaking uncontrollably, Eleanor, Arthur, and Chloe picked up the pens and signed every single legal document put in front of them. When they finished, I took the signed agreements, unlocked my front door, and held it wide open. Get out of my house, I said quietly, and never step foot on my properties again. They filed out into the cold evening air without saying another word, stripped of their arrogance, their fake superiority, and their stolen wealth. Within 6 months, my father's house was sold to cover his debts. Chloe's fiancé was forced to liquidate his business to avoid criminal prosecution, and my family officially shattered under the weight of their own greed. As for me, I took full control of Richard's 3 apartment complexes, managing them with the honor, care, and integrity he always stood for. Standing up to my toxic family was the hardest thing I've ever done, but in doing so, I protected my husband's legacy and finally found my own voice. Now, I'm curious about you watching this right now. What would you have done if you were standing in my shoes? Would you have given them one last chance, or handed them straight over to the police? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories.